Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our TED Talk, Data Science for Sample Companies, Unlocking Participant Lifetime Value with AI.
Like that? Hi, everyone. Yes, we're live. Hope everyone's having a great SampleCon thus far. My name is Michael. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Emporia Research. We do all things verified B2B data collection, and in this session, very excited to share with you how we think about panel economics or audience economics and how you can increase your participant lifetime value with, you guessed it, artificial intelligence. It was the theme of the last conference you went to. It was the theme of this conference. It's probably going to be the theme of every conference you go to for the rest of your career until the robots have taken over and we're on the beach somewhere. But the machines are not in control just yet, so let's jump into things. So maybe important to frame the session here with something I think we can all agree with, and that is probably the most frustrating thing for participants is screening out, right? You spend a couple of minutes of your time and your mental energy to get maybe 5 or 6 minutes into a survey just to get screened out. It's the worst, right? It's incredibly frustrating, and not only does it probably piss off your panelists, but it also directly impacts your profitability and your bottom line. And now, I think this is something that everyone should look into their own data in this regard, but something that we've seen that I think a lot of other folks have kind of corroborated as well, is that every time a participant screens out of a survey or an opportunity, they're 25% less likely to participate with you again. So I'll say that one more time because it's pretty important. Every time a participant screens out of a survey or an opportunity, they're 25% less likely to participate with you again. Dan Entrup and Bill from Acknowledge have written some really great material on this. I'd encourage you to check that out. But if we can assume that much, we can start to think about how we calculate participant lifetime value, or what we call PLTV. Now, there's a lot of complicated ways of thinking about this. There's lots of even more simplified ways of looking at it. This is how we think about it, and I won't get too into the weeds on the math here, but basically what's happening is we look to understand the average value of a participant in a given period. That's the numerator there, and then try and figure out what their screen out rate is and weight that with folks that are actually passing to then calculate PLTV. And so probably best visualized directly in an example. So let's look at one, or look at three. So we make some assumptions here. The first is that, to simplify things, the first is that the average revenue per survey is $100 to make things simple. The net, or the gross margin, is 80%. Your churn rate, or just your natural panel attrition, that's folks that are just leaving your panel over time regardless of your screen out rate, is 3%. And then your churn factor is 3%, or 25%, as mentioned earlier. So a couple scenarios. We've got panel A, panel B, panel C, all have different screen out rates. Panel A, killing it. We've got a 10% screen out rate. That means 90% of folks that they're inviting to an engagement are going through to what we call a success action, or completing the survey. And the PLTV for panel A is over $1,300. Panel B, slightly different scenario here, a bit middle of the road. They've got a 50% screen out rate, and so they have a PLTV of $264. So just going from a 10% screen out rate to a 50% screen out rate drops you all the way down to $264 from over $1,300. And then panel C, bringing up the rear, is at a 70% screen out rate, which, if we kind of ask ourselves and are realistic, this is what we're probably seeing out in practice in the wild, especially B2B. I mean, it's a 30% incidence, right? And so there's such a difference between that, over $1,300 to $120 in the value of your participants. And it really, that bad targeting really is a vicious cycle. You go from bad targeting, which leads to high screen out rates, resulting in reduced retention, which leaves you with lower PLTV, which just means you have to go and you have to go and acquire these users again. There's this hidden cost of, replenishing your panel or your audience that a lot of us don't really think about. And so the answer to this, we think, is just better targeting and panel engagement. The targeting aims to combat just those screen out rates, maybe obviously. And the panel engagement is to combat that just natural attrition, that natural churn factor. And so we have a couple of recommendations, 4 recommendations, that are all things that we do at Employee Research that we see a lift from, that hopefully, if you don't employ any of these strategies today, maybe you can take with you and deploy at your own audience company or panel or sample companies. And the first is moving from a lexical search to a semantic search. Now, I think this is kind of table stakes in 2025, but in talking to industry peers, we're surprised at how many folks haven't made this switch or don't know what it is. And if you're not on the technical team, you don't have to really know what this is, but you should at least bring this back and ask the technical team, because so many of these solutions now they're off the shelf and you can implement them pretty easily. And so if you don't know what, again, any of those words mean, this walkthrough makes things pretty clear. And so if we start with a project query at the top, so call it IT decision makers, we love our ITDMs. In a lexical search or a keyword search, we are looking for exact matches. And so we look at things like IT or decision or makers, and that's really it. And so we're left with things like IT decision makers or decision makers, whereas on the other side of things, with our semantic search, which is vector-based, we're looking for similar vectors or embeddings. And that's just kind of a fancy way of saying we're looking for similar meanings. And so that same IT decision maker query in a semantic search or semantic search framework gives you things like CIO or tech leaders or chief technology officer, where you're finding much more precise fits without the precise wording. And so better targeting recommendation number 1, moving from lexical search to semantic search. Better targeting recommendation number 2, and this is one we get really excited about, is pre-targeting using one-to-one synthetic representations of your panel. There's lots of talk about synthetics. I think there's a spectrum of usability with synthetics. And this is one where we think there really is a clear use case and one we're seeing lift from. And so essentially what you're doing here is creating a one-to-one kind of digital twin of all the self-reported data that you have on panelists, and then pulling in all the maybe third-party data that you have on panelists to create a digital twin of their profile, and using that to run through screeners to decide if you want to then invite that actual real person to an engagement. And so kind of laid out in a flow here to make things a little bit more clear. You start with your one-to-one representation of your panel, and when you have an engagement, we have this pre-targeting step. And the synthetic persona for the real person will then take a screener, and if they pass, we have this evaluation step, and if they pass, then we invite that real person to then take the full survey. If that synthetic persona does not pass, we do not invite them. And so no, we're not actually asking for the preferences or so on from that synthetic persona. I think jury's out at like how usable some of that is just yet. We think it will be, but jury's out on the actual application of some of that today. But this is just looking at someone's profile and taking a guess on some, maybe professional or firmographic criteria. So maybe an example, we're running a survey looking for, again, ITDMs, and maybe the revenue requirement is over 100 million. And that might not be on that individual's profile in your panel, and it might not be on their LinkedIn profile or the company LinkedIn profile, but the synthetic persona has that context to say, oh, maybe this person, they work at Google, that company clearly has revenue over 100 million, we're going to pass them through, or their synthetic persona is going to pass that screener question, and that actual real person gets invited to the survey, whereas maybe it's a mid-market company, IT decision maker, who looks the same on paper, but the synthetic persona knows, okay, no, the revenue here is not over 100 million, we're not going to invite that person. So better targeting recommendation number 2 is one-to-one synthetic representations of your panel. Panel engagement recommendation number 1 is gamifying participation in new and novel ways. We're relatively new to the insights industry. We started our company a little over 3 years ago. So we've talked to a lot of folks about how we can create a panel engagement program and ask folks like what they do. And what we've heard from a lot of folks is maybe they have a panel engagement program that they set up 4, 5, 6 years ago that sort of works, that they haven't really revisited. We think it's 2025. There's lots of creative ways you can engage your panelist. This is an example of just one that we really like. Again, we're just B2B focused, and so we've created a certification program where you can share your expertise on your LinkedIn profile, for example. And so we've talked to a lot of our B2B respondents. None of them could care any less about getting points for points' sake, but they do care about showcasing their expertise and that they contribute to the better products and services and strategies in their industry. And we make it super simple, one click once you've achieved so many engagements to earn one of these certifications and throw it up on your LinkedIn profile. And then lastly, panel engagement recommendation number 2 is just predicting and mitigating what we call frustration points. This is something that I think a lot of us intuitively know, but maybe we haven't taken the time to really dig in and identify what those frustration points are and create what we call mitigating actions. There's a lot of tools that will do this out of the box for you. So we use Datadog quite heavily at Emporia Research. It's really great at pre-identifying some of these frustration points. But to give you one of many examples, you can really spend a lot of time kind of diving in here. But for something like screen out rates, which we're talking about here, we know that after 3 screen out rates without reaching a successful terminal state or a success action, there's a high likelihood of someone not coming back with us, or they're kind of in the danger zone. And so we have a frustration level, and someone in this example graduates from low to medium to high in terms of their frustration count as they continue to screen out with any success action. And so we want to create triggers that then drive folks to these mitigating actions. And those can be a number of things. We like to use evergreen surveys as an example, where always-on surveys that we're running, for a couple bucks, for example. Maybe it's to further flesh out your profile on our participant portal, on our panel, so that we can then use that to create a better synthetic representation of you to screen for, so that you can, again, be better targeted. But I think headline is identify what those frustration points are, and then kind of put a system in place where there are triggers that drive folks to mitigating actions or re-engagement opportunities. And that's all I've got. We are super nerds for some of this stuff, especially the synthetics. And so if you want to chat further about some of this, we are going to be here in the collaboration lab from 3:30 to 4:45. So come find us, and looking forward to chatting. Thanks so much.